Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Atlantic Canada companies. We're delighted that you could join us today. Thank you so much for joining us, and I apologize for being a little bit late. It's the delights of working at home at the moment, and that's my dog. Today we're going to be talking about online in the USA. It's something I think that interests a lot of you, and we're glad to see you so enthusiastically joining in. Before we start, a quick introduction about a sort of who's who today. So my name is Susanna Hardy. I'm Chief Content Officer at a company called IBT Online, and I'm joined by a great resource for Atlantic companies, Erin Smith. She's the Program Manager at CBDC and has a huge amount of knowledge and resources for Atlantic Canada companies. So please do feel free to get in touch with her. And I'll let her introduce herself as well in a moment. Quick mention also of who we are as a company. IBT Online stands for International Business Technologies. And we are actually a US company. We're 100% focused on providing online tools. So websites and online marketing for small to mid-cap companies who want to go global, who want to have international websites. So that's what we are. We are, although we're a U.S. company, we are extremely proud and pleased to be working with the Atlantic Canada provinces to help companies in the region, in the provinces, with their online tools. So a quick mention then also of what we're going to be talking about today. Today's webinar, we're going to first let Erin talk a minute bit about Atlantic Canadian companies helping hand, so what the CBDC and your provinces are doing, and we'll show you some website pages as well where you can get resources. Then we're going to go and look at the USA from coast to coast. What does that mean, the online environment in the USA? We're going to drill down then, talk about best practice US websites. What does a US audience expect from a good website? What do they need to have to build the trust needed for the buyer's journey? We're going to talk also about social media in the US. Because I think if you're going to have a website in the US, it's now such a competitive place, you might need to think about some kind of strategy right from the start about what you're actually doing with your website. And finally, so takeaways, next steps, Q&A, such. So let's get started today. So we're going to first talking about a little bit what I've called a helping hand for the Atlantic Canada region, for the provinces, and for all the companies there. So we have actually built a page just for resources for the Atlantic Canadian companies on our website, so ibt.onl. And there's a lot of things there that you can find, which are downloadables, from infographics to white papers and blogs and webinars on how to do things. And please, if we can give any help, let us know. But we're very struck as well by how, all the provinces, the Atlantic provinces, have really come together. Newfoundland, Labrador, PEI, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, have really all come together to help, including with at federal level, the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, to help, drive forward and give dedicated resources to companies who are looking to go and grow globally, to develop their exports and their international markets. And part of that also, as I said, we have these online global programs and dedicated resources for you on our website. But part of that is this series of webinars that we're doing at the moment. And at the moment, there are 9 webinars that are in place. I've listed them there on your screen. So today we're doing online in the USA, but for example, we've done ones on global e-commerce, Latin America, what is website localization, online marketing. Later this week, we've got online in Japan, online in South Korea, and so on. So all of those things are there for you to listen to when you want and to share with people in your company if that's of interest, and can be downloaded either from our website and then later on from Erin's as well. So please do let us know if there are other topics that you want us to cover, and I'm sure we could reach out and help with those as well. I'm going to let Erin also just briefly introduce herself in terms of what the CBDC can do for you.
Thanks, Susanna. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Erin Smith. I'm Executive Director of the Nova Scotia Association CBDCs. We're the delivery agent for the project that's hosting these webinars. And the funding support for this project, it's made possible through the Atlantic Trade and Investment Growth Agreement. This is a partnership of ACOA and the 4 Atlantic provincial governments. Government has really made it a priority to help companies get access to the help that they need to export online. And we're going to provide a list of contacts for all of those government folks in each of the regions at the end of the webinar. I encourage you to connect with them to learn more about other programs and services they've got available. If you missed that contact slide or you're not quite sure who it is you should be chatting with, my contact information is there on the screen. Feel free to reach out. I can make those introductions for you and get you connected to some of the other resources that are also available. We're really looking to help you guys succeed in your exporting journeys. Let's dive into the USA.
Right, thank you very much, Erin. There's actually quite a lot in this webinar. I try to make them 35 minutes, sort of. If I run over a little bit today, then I apologize. But some of the things I first wanted to say, thank you for that question. I love getting questions in the middle of things. My website is a .ca. How important is it for me to obtain .com for US customers? Good question. We're going to get right onto that. So the first slide I want to show you is a .ca versus a .com. You might have heard in the background when we started that my dog was like growling and things like that. She does that in the middle of webinars. On the right-hand side of the screen, you have, when it finally loads, you have squeakless dog toys. And what happens when you type that into a Toronto-based, or if you're looking in Toronto, based in Toronto, you're looking at Google in Canada, squeakless dog toys. Google knows full well that you happen to be in this case, Toronto. There was the person I asked to do it, he's based in Toronto. And so we'll then bring up things that are most relevant to you. Now, Toronto sits on the border with New York State, but nonetheless, it's going to bring up things that are most relevant to you. So you get PetSmart.ca, PetMax.ca, Homes Alive, Tough Dog Toys.ca, and in Miami, Florida, a colleague of mine typed that in. You know, it's Google. Squeakless dog toys, squeakless dog toys. The results are different because Google in Miami knows where she's sitting. And Google in Toronto, Google Canada, knows where that person is sitting and knows what language they're into, all of their preferences, and will give them what is relevant to them. So while your .ca can occasionally creep across the border into New Hampshire and New England, for you, it is unlikely to really serve your interests if you're looking for US customers. You need something that tells Google that you're targeting a US audience. And let's talk about that a bit more. This has to do with something called website localization. And I've gone through this on another webinar called Website Localization Webinar. There are 10 elements that make up a website that's localized. And here are the 10 elements. Note that language is one of them. So it's not about translating your website if you're looking for, a French website or a Spanish website. It's a lot more. Registered domain name, that's your .ca, is really important. So if you're looking for a French website, you need a .fr. If you're looking for a Mexican, it's a .mx. Google sees your .ca and says it's a Canadian website for Canadians. It might not be relevant for Americans. One way you have of looking at this, which is I really recommend, is to look and see where your traffic is coming from geographically. And if you've all got your website, you look at the Google Analytics, have a look and see where people are coming from geographically. And this is something you should be monitoring regularly to make sure that your website is performing the way you want it to. So this, for example, is a website we have for a Canadian company, and they're actually targeting the state as well, or region. So out of the 450 visitors to that website, 87 87% came from the US. So that is a localized.com website that we built. And Google thinks that 7% of those people is relevant, it's relevant to 87% of those times. And you'll find that people who came on it by accident almost, from, I don't know, China, spent 2 seconds and left. So it really is a website for the US that Google says, yes, this is for the US, and .com. You'll note on the right-hand side of this slide as well, this is a company who targets certain industries and was very keen to have a strong presence in the sort of Virginia and sort of northeast area, sort of Pennsylvania. And indeed, we do know Virginia and Pennsylvania are the 1 in 3 visitors. The England one happens, I think it's probably the company itself, because they're also based in England. And so this is a localized website. You could tell that because of where people are coming from. So Google recognizes it as relevant for that market, not other markets. I hope that answered your question. The other question you can ask yourself is, how many English language websites do I need in that case? I've got one for Canada. Why do I need another one? And English is a very, very, widely spoken language. It's the number 1 language of the internet. But as I said, if you're targeting the UK, you need a .co.uk, and you need you need something that tells Google that you're targeting the UK. Same thing if you're targeting sort of South Africa or something. Okay, you might want to have it in English, but it does need to be referenced by Google. So to answer your very pertinent question, does my .ca work in the US? No, not really. There's a lot of little things that tell Google as well. So it's not just the domain name. It can be the way the English is written, the vocabulary, the measurement systems, and as Canadians, we all know this. Z or Z. Do you spell practice with a C or an S? So these are small things, but they do count in terms of how your website gets referenced and whether it seems to be relevant for the local market. And the internet's a competitive place, so you need to make sure that your online tools are making it as easy as possible for Google or whatever search engine you want to make sure that they are referencing, saying yes, that website is right for that reference. So here's an example, like how to change your website. Okay, now this is actually a UK company with a .com, and they just took some different images so that an American coming onto this website said, "Oh, downtown to Indianapolis, they must be American." They're actually a UK company, so they just tweaked a few things, really particularly about the type of truck. The sign, the road signage, like that, to really make it feel and look more American. And that's also called a user experience. And we'll get onto that in a moment. First, I wanted to sort of give a broad brushstroke as well, a broad landscape about what the United States of America looks like online. Total population 330 million. 90% of them, of that 330 million, are online. This was taken in January 2020. It's grown a little bit since then. So 90% of the population are on the internet. And of that, the vast majority, say 70% or even 75% of the population by now, are active social media users. And that's I think really an important statistic to remember when you're thinking about this. And when we say online, the US spends an average of 7 hours a day, 6 hours and 57 minutes a day online. So you have 290 million people south of the border, 7 hours a day online, and they're almost all on social media. And this is good news. This is good news for you in the Atlantic provinces. You know how and you know where to reach your clients. You reach them online, through social media, and through your website. That's how you can reach your clients, your prospects, your competitors, your employees, everybody. So that's I think good news for you. I wanted to show this as well, because when some people say, well, in fact, you know, a lot of the clients that I talk to are perhaps in the USA, you know, it's a melting pot. A lot of different languages out there. So one thing you want to make sure about on your website is to make sure that your language is correct for the audience you're looking for. And I just find it amazing that, for example, in California, 45% of the population of California picks another language to English as the one they speak at home. And this has grown sort of, you know, several fold. I think the number is, I think, tripled since 1980 of the number of people who are non-English speakers in the United States. In terms of I mean, the predominant language that you'll find there is Spanish, but Chinese, Arabic, Hindi, Tagalog, and Vietnamese are significant as well. The biggest and the fastest rising is obviously Spanish for that. And that's worth remembering as well. You know, some of you might also say, in fact, I have a Hispanic population there as well, which I might want to take care of. Another point about websites in the USA is something I think that even American companies don't realize so much, but coming your way, coming everybody's way, is online compliance. And this is really because I guess the Silicon Valley phenomenon and such realizes that data is in fact an asset. You know, and what is data? Data is all the stuff you put on your machines every second of the day, and that can not just your emails you're sending, but all the data. That can be your GPS data, that can be financial transactions, you know, online health, everything. And data is what absolutely drives a lot of the valuations of tech companies. And with that understanding about the importance of data comes the importance of compliance. The US is behind the curve, certainly from Europe, but it is coming towards that. It's going towards that compliance, led really by California. California has put in the CCPA, and they're strengthening it all the time. And the CCPA is the California Consumer Privacy Act. It basically says, you know, we are moving towards the recognition that data is important, that data belongs to the person whose data it is, not to the company, and such. So to cut a long story short, for data compliance, we would really encourage you, even if it's not yet the law in all US states, we would really encourage you for any US website to be of the highest level of data compliance. So at the very least, have solid encryption, SSL certificates, cookie policy, and privacy policy. At the very least, it is coming your way. And if I look at the CCPA, it's for, I mean, that's for the California ones. Okay, it's still very, you know, it's still very much limited, as you know, for companies that have more than $25 million in sales and things like that. But it applies to Canadian companies working in California as well. And it's very similar to the European one. You know, consumer has the right to its data, opt out, and so on, and there are teeth. The hilarious thing that I think is that if you look on the website of the California Legislative Information, it is not a secure website, which is pretty extraordinary. So the website is not even CCPA compliant. But anyway, for Canadians, I think what we have to have is to make sure that one of the things, essences of your US website, it's not a .ca. It is relevant to Google in the United States. It does have compliance. So those are some of the key elements. Let's drill down now in what I would call best practice US websites. So what makes a really good US website in 2021? There's this notion of UX, user experience, and what we would like to call, excuse me, is LUX, localized user experience. And you know, there's two parts about that. So there's for us, there's some sort of non-negotiables. These are the things that must make a good website. If you don't have these non-negotiables, it's not a good website. You must be easy to be found. You must be easy to be understood. Once someone comes on your website, they have to have an invitation to browse and go around the website to easily find information. And that's also what I've called this direction of travel. You have to have an ultimate result of the website. What do you want your user to do? Request a quote, get more information, buy online? And how does that user land on your website and progress through those stages to actually reach out and say, yes, please send me more information, or send me a price for this, or where can I buy this? So how do you map that buyer's journey? And then some of the things about that I've talked about on the right hand side, what that means is obviously that it's well built. It is optimized for Google.com, the US market. It's localized for the US market. That means, for example, you might even have to change from metric to imperial if you have measurements on your website, or at least put the imperial in brackets, because Americans won't necessarily feel at ease talking about kilos. They want pounds. Similarly, the calls to action are correct. They're like, request a quote, and here's the contact form. And then for me, last but not least, the design is engaging and pleasing. So that's a couple of sort of, major things to have on any website, but particularly in a very competitive website, like a web environment like the USA. You want to be really on top of your game on some of those things. Some of the top trends of US websites. This is actually a US customer of ours, so we took their website and gave it a facelift. And I wanted to highlight a couple of major trends that are hitting the US and that I think are developing still in 2021. I can foresee this in 2022 if I have a crystal ball. The one is making it more authentic, more embedded in its community, having less pictures of inanimate objects and stock photos. Stock photos are out. You cannot use stock photos anymore. You have to have your own images, even if they're bad quality is better than stock images. And people, they want to see that you are locally embedded and that you have that it's a person. Here's just another example of the same thing. So it's very clear laid out. It's clearly understood what it is. The navigation bar at the top is absolutely clear and easy to read. Obviously, mobile enabled. Again, this is some of the top trends that you're seeing in US websites. Clearly visible, easy to navigate, and engaging. And one of the other big trends is that it's real people. So these are genuine employees of the company, and it's not a stock photo. It's we are people, we are craftsmen. We happen to be producing something, but this is what we do. We are legitimate and authentic. There's nothing fake here for that. I wanted to step back a second here and perhaps slightly anecdotal. There's a guy I follow on Instagram who's a really great pianist, and I was intrigued that at the start of the pandemic, he changed all of his Instagram. He's very active on social media. He changed all of his Instagram and said, I am first of all a human being, and then a citizen, and then third place, I'm a pianist. So it was this feeling of, I'm a human being most of all, this authenticity that came out in terms of the local user experience. That was very strongly put out there throughout 2020, and I think heightened by Black Lives Matter, by the social movements that we saw. It's part of the same narrative, really. And when I went to a huge, big marketing thing, online marketing. It's the biggest in the world, online marketing forum. And I expected, it was a virtual tour in 2020, but I expected to see a lot of talk about algorithms, automation, AI, flywheels, and all kinds of things like that. And in fact, what I got was a lot of talk about how to make things authentic, how to make things less mechanistic, how to make things more about the way people actually search versus a strict guideline for the Google algorithm. And Google is also leading that charge. It's reflected in the way it's changed its algorithm. And certainly in the United States, you're finding it a much more supple, much more flexible way of doing it, but much more involved about how is the user experience of that website, how are the words written, how is it the text foreseen, is it genuine? If, for example, you say I've got 5 keywords that make my website. I know these 5 keywords, and you just stuff your website full of it, Google actually marks you down. Google will say big X box over that website because they're doing stuffing, keyword stuffing. And this is more and more seamless, right for the person, right, be more and more human, and very much led by websites in the United States. So in terms of local user experience in the United States, when you're looking at content creation, yes, do blogs, B2B blogs, B2C blogs, but even the B2B blogs, write for the reader, not the machine. And I love this quote, don't write smart, just write pure. Write the way that you would understand, that it's understandable. Don't write as though you're sort of making something more complex or using fancier words to appear bigger. Just be absolutely clear. Clarity trumps the length and breadth each time. The CTO of Oracle gave a great quote as well. Being an authority is no use unless you're approachable and understandable. So again, these are my top 4 recommendations about content creation in the United States. And if I'm looking at content creation and local user experience in the United States, there's a lot that goes into that buyer's journey of attracting somebody, attracting a prospective buyer that can be with your website, with social media, converting them then with good landing pages, with good forms, with calls to actions, and then closing that sale. Again, that would be, getting on the phone with them, replying promptly to those emails, sending out the samples that you need to do, and then obviously, delighting them, usually by your products. These images look incredibly organized, and that looks doable, and very organized. Someone goes from that to that to that to that. But the buyer's journey is no longer linear, especially in markets like the US. People come onto your website in all parts of the website. They find you through email, through a mobile phone, through an event, through a corporate website. They find you in all kinds of ways. They no longer find you in one trend. There's not a funnel as such. And once they get onto your website, they hop around all over the place. They don't go from your home page to the products, to the about us, to the contact us. They flip all over the place. So good websites today also have a lot of links. And I guess I get back to that story about that the direction of travel from your website, that you're saying, if someone lands here on this page, where do they go after that? They landed on a product page. They looked at the product page, and then where did they go from that product page? Did you put a call to action there? Did you say, get more information, reach us out, or find out more, or here's something that might interest you? Lead them on to the next page. Lead them on to the back of the home page. They will check out your About Us page. So make sure that you're aware that your prospective client, especially in places like the USA, will be traveling all around your website and all around any of the social media that you're having. Right, moving along. Because I'm cognizant of time, I want to also talk about very briefly social media in the United States. we said in the beginning that sort of 90% of the population is on the internet about 7 hours a day. One of the big things they're doing is communicating, talking, chatting, asking questions on social media, and much of it on mobile phone. But about 70% of the population is on social media these days. And I said earlier that the web is a very competitive place in the United States. If you're thinking of having a US website, think right from the start, what am I going to do with that US website? How am I going to leverage it? How am I going to get out there and how am I going to get that needle to stick out of the haystack? Because there's an awful lot of needles in that haystack. How do I get mine to stick out so people actually see it, engage with it? Obviously, you localize it properly, but you might want to think right from the start about some kind of social media, even if it's just Instagram. United States, YouTube, Facebook are leaders, but Instagram is catching up. Facebook's losing a little bit of its clout. Instagram is owned by Facebook, but there you go. The social media platform you choose depends also on your industry and where your prospective buyers sit. Some of them only, for manufacturing companies, they tend to prefer YouTube and LinkedIn, for example. B2C is very much more Instagram and perhaps also Pinterest. So, choose your platform well. If you want to have more about online marketing, we did a webinar about that quite recently. A quick word also on 2020, and I apologize for the fuzzy image on that. I don't know what's happened there. 2020, I've called it the year that wasn't, except in social media. The amount of people who used and adopted social media for the first time ever went up phenomenally in 2020, and looks like it's, the first 2 months of 2021 looks like it's here to stay as well. So 51% of US adults using more than 4 minutes a day on messaging. So that's to up to 20. They added it from 20 minutes to 24 minutes a day on messaging apps, for example. And if you look at the fuzzy part of your slide there, by April, 47% of US adults were saying they were using social media more since the coronavirus epidemic. So here's another way of looking at the same thing. It's a bit hard to see, but that very sharp green line, that's Zoom. So that's Zoom over the last year, the take-up of Zoom in the United States. So that's a reflection of what people are doing. Some of the very biggest ones, I think it's worth having a thought right from the start, as I said, about your social media marketing, and choose the right platform. It can be an enormous enabler for you if you get the platform right, and if you get the pathway right in terms of social media. One of the biggest things to remember about it for social media in the United States: don't stop. If you're going to do social media, give it a solid 3-6 months, because that's the time it's going to take before you start seeing results. I mentioned Facebook as well. It's obviously still an enormous platform, the largest in the world by a long way, and the second largest after YouTube in the United States, and an amazingly strong way of segmenting your audience. Facebook is quite expensive in the States if you're looking for Facebook ads, and it's not right for all industries, but certainly for some industries, if you've got the right profile there and you're sure about your targeted buyer persona, it is a very powerful, the most powerful platform. I mentioned YouTube as well. I regard YouTube increasingly as a search engine, and I think that's a good way of looking at it, just to say YouTube, in fact, is used like, how do I find this? How do I do this? Where can I find the best? And you go on YouTube to find those answers nowadays, and that's also worth thinking about. I think it's worth remembering that YouTube is the place where companies look the most as well. So if you as a Canadian company are looking to say, I want people to find me best, YouTube is a very powerful one. It's easy as well to optimize through something called alt tags, but remember to embed it in your website. Otherwise, you embed it on YouTube, which is great for YouTube, but not necessarily for you. So embed it in your website so that when people go on and click onto that YouTube, they're brought to your website. So when the YouTube ends, they're on your website, as opposed to being on YouTube. Because if they're on YouTube, they're going to go on to the next YouTube. They're going to go on to the next video, and then you've lost them. So do embed that on your website. Social media in the USA, as I said earlier, is a very effective way also for B2C companies. And it's important to have a whole variety of possibilities here. Here you have an example of a company who's just doing things. They have an ongoing presence all the time, but at certain periods of the year when they know it's just, the buying period, that's when they ramp it up a little bit. But even in the periods which are the least engaged with, just for seasonal reasons, they maintain a baseline. Because otherwise you've got to ramp the whole thing up each time again. And by that time, your buying window is over already. So I just wanted to point that out, even if the graph looks, even if your graph there on the bar charts there look like, oh, it's going down a bit, but it goes up towards Christmas, November, December, January, September, October, November. That's their peak time of the year that they want. And that's when they're getting their sessions from their social media traction. Just an example, some more examples of social media in the United States, just to maintain, just to reinforce that message. Keep it regular, keep it going on throughout. And you can reuse posts regularly. You can have like a flywheel of them going along. Social media is not just for B2C, it's also B2B. I think I've said this a couple of times. The chart on the left, I think, is quite telling as well. It just basically says social media channels used for B2B research. Well, as I said, YouTube is the #1, but Facebook is right up there too, 50%. So, worth keeping in mind, building brand awareness and connecting with your audience on a regular basis, making sure that they always think of you, that you're front of mind, that when they do need to buy something that you're producing, they think of you. The last thing I wanted to say about social media is, and websites as well, they are real levelers. You can compete against the biggest in the world if you've got the right online tools. It levels the playing field for that. It really allows you to punch above your weight and reach out beyond the Atlantic provinces and go wherever you want in the world if you've got the right strategy, the right tools. And the right tools will be a localized website and a localized social media strategy as well. So there you go. That was the quick rundown. It's 40 minutes. I'm sorry. I knew this would take a little bit longer. Quick sort of takeaways, the action points as well. So just to sort of say, just remind you, for us, why is it important that you even have online business development tools? Basically, because the world is online, and the United States is particularly digitally minded and digitally obsessed. So it's a great way to get bound and to make sure that you're understood by the local market and that they're easy to do business with. And if you're easy to do business with, that buyer's journey builds, and you build trust in that, which is so necessary for the buyer's journey. Then I've called it the new online normal. I don't know what 2021, 2022 will bring, but I don't think we're going backwards in terms of online tools. There are a lot of dedicated resources for you, including these webinars. Please do reach out if we can be of any help. And if you want to step back and find out more about website localization, there's a webinar that we did earlier about a month ago. If you want to find out more about online marketing, or if you're interested in another part of the world, Latin America, Europe, Southeast Asia, where Japan is on Thursday. Join us for those webinars as well. Or you can always reach out to me or to anybody or to Aaron. And here's the list also of the contacts in Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, Labrador, New Brunswick. So do reach out to your province people and helpers. And if you can't find them, you can always reach out to Erin. But whether it's Kara Squires or Kevin or Darlene or Trevor, reach out and ask for more information. There's a lot of help for Atlantic Canada companies. So really making use of it. All the provinces are there to help you with that. So finally, I guess just a last sort of message from us. Harness the internet. It's the most empowering tool you can have in the 21st century, in my view. Excuse me. Check out our webinars, sign up for them, listen to them, share them, get your teams together and think if this is the right thing for your company. Should we be doing this? Should we engage in this? And then get in touch if we can help. And there you go. On Thursday, we'll be talking also about online in Japan. We hope you can join us there. I hope I answered that first question. I just do see that there's a couple of other questions that have come in. With regards to data compliance, the strictest in the States is the CCPA in California. If you want to be top of the game, get the European GDPR. But if you are already compliant with a CCPA, then you're ahead of the game. Many American companies aren't even compliant. But at the very least, you should make sure that you have something called SSL certificates. In other words, that your websites are secure, encrypted. Get a opt-in cookie policy and a full privacy policy. There's one other question that's also turned up about content. Can you help with US content? Sure, we can help with US content. We regularly help with content for content creation and curation for websites and online marketing. No problem at all. Good, thank you all very much. We know that you're all zoomed out, so we very much appreciate that you were able to join us today. And I hope you found the webinar interesting and useful. Do reach out if we have any help or download the other webinars. Take care, happy exporting, happy growing your business. Take care, everybody. Thank you all very, very much indeed. Bye-bye.